Hey there drone fans, today I'll show you how you can easily use the DJI RC2 controller to fly the brand new DJI Neo drone. Now when the Neo was first released, there seemed to be a bit of confusion about which controller was supported with the drone. Now the drone is really unique because it's like having several different styles of drone in a single airframe. For example, you can fly it as a selfie drone. Simply put it in your hand, hit the power button, pick one of the predetermined flight patterns, the drone will lift off, fly that pattern, take some really incredible video, and then come back and land right in your hand. You can also fly it from your phone, and you can use your voice to launch it. And you've got virtual joysticks on your phone to fly the drone around your backyard. You can also fly it as an FPV drone. If you've got the DJI Goggles 2 and the new motion controller, poof, it's an FPV drone. But I wanted to fly it as a conventional drone, just like I fly all my other drones. And when they released the Neo, DJI also released a brand new controller called the DJI RC3. And it made it seem like you needed that controller to fly the drone. Well, a lot of people out there already own other controllers from other DJI products, and they were all wondering, why can't we fly this with an older controller? Now, I don't know what the connection topology between the drone and the controller is. I've been trying to figure that out. It could be OcuSync, could be Wi-Fi, could be a modified version of Wi-Fi, but whatever that topology is, works really well with the new N3 controller. So I was thinking to myself, well, couldn't they release a firmware update because the older controllers have radios in them? Couldn't they update the firmware to make those older controllers compatible with the brand new Neo drone? And I guess DJI heard the feedback. They're a company that's very responsive to customer feedback, and they released over-the-air firmware updates that modified the DJI RCN2 and the RC2 to now be compatible with the Neo. So if you own the RCN2 or you own the RC2, you can now fly the Neo with both of those controllers. And that's a big deal because a lot of companies would have released the drone, released the new controller, and you could only use that controller with the drone. DJI, again, because they've got an engineering team that can easily update features through firmware, release this firmware update over the air. You can download it on your controllers, on the drone, and on the application, and fly it with that controller. Now, the RC2 works really well. I've tested it. The RC3 obviously works really well. The RC2 is a little bit trickier to get working, and I'm going to show you exactly what you have to do that. So stay tuned, and I'll give you the versions you need for the firmware on the controller, the firmware on the drone, and the version of the DJI Fly app you'll need to get the three working together. So stay tuned and I'll give you those numbers. It's really important that you check the versions of the firmware on the drone, the controller, and on the DJI Fly application, because in my case, I'd update all three. And the best way to do that is to download the DJI Assistant 2 for consumer drones, load it up on your computer. Once the program is open, just connect the Neo up to the computer with a USB-C cable. The application will see it, and it'll show you the current firmware versions and the newer ones that are available. Now with the drone, the version you want is V01.00.0200 or 0300. Both of those will work okay. I landed on 0300 just because I wanted the latest version. And then once you're done with the drone, disconnect it, connect up your controller, and on the controller you want to make sure you're on version V02.07.0000. Once you finish the controller, you should be able to boot up the drone, boot up the controller, and the controller will realize that you have an older version of the DJI Fly app, and it should ask you to update, and the current version there is V1.14.2. And once you've finished all of those updates, power cycle everything. Turn off the Neo, turn off the controller, power up the Neo, power up the controller, and then on the main screen, you'll have a choice to choose the Neo on the smart controller, tap that. It may connect directly, but if it doesn't, you can force that connection by waiting for it to time out, then tapping that blue text on the bottom, which will start the manual process of trying to sync up. And then you'll want to hold the power button down on the Neo for about 10 seconds. You'll hear a beep from the Neo. That means it's in sync mode. And right away they'll sync up. And then you'll immediately see the screen, the actual view from the screen on the controller, and you're ready to fly. It's just that easy. And if you want to flip back to a Mini 4 or you want to flip back to the Air 3, you can make that choice the next time you power up your controller. Now, I'm going to go outside and show you that this works because I know a lot of people think, oh, you know, you're talking about this. We're not sure if it's going to work. I'm going to take you outside and show you how it works. And I'm telling you, I really like this controller because it makes things so much simpler when you're out there in the field and ready to fly. So stay tuned. We'll head outside and then I'll come back with a few final thoughts. I'm outside to start flying the brand new Neo drone with the RC2 controller. Now to get here, I've updated the firmware on the controller to the latest version, and I've updated the firmware on the drone. And the first time you bring up the controller with the new firmware,
you'll have an aircraft selection screen at the front where you can choose the Neo, the Mini 4, or the Air 3. So I've chosen the Neo, and when I first tried to link it up, it didn't find the drone automatically, so what I had to do was hold down on the power button until it went into linking mode, and then enable linking on the controller, and they finally saw each other and joined up. And you can see I've got a video from the actual camera on the Neo right there on the screen. So I can't wait to try this because I really like this RC2 controller with the built-in screen. It just makes things so much simpler. And if I can fly the Neo, the Mini 4, and the Air 3 with it, that would be wonderful. So anyway, here we go. All right, so to start everything up, I'm gonna pull the joysticks down into the center. Yep, and the props have spun up on the drone. So let me try and lift off and see what happens. There we go. All right, home point updated. So it's got GPS, RTF, all ready to go, or RTH ready to go. So up and down. Again, I always like to check the controls. Very responsive. Just like in the new N3, it's just as responsive. So here we've got a beautiful video from the drone. Let me spin it around this way. I'll put it up just to see what we can capture in that corner over there, because beyond that's a bunch of farms. So let me start the recording and I'm gonna elevate. It's not windy at all today, so I can trust it up there near the top of the trees. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, I'm up about, well, I'm up there quite a ways. Up to 80 feet already. And there's the farms just beyond. Boy, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. Let me pan down a little bit. Wow. Yeah, and it pans really well. So this controller is working flawlessly with the new Neo. Let me bring it down. I want to speak a little bit to that functionality. Just make sure I'm not going to hit the trees on the way down. Now we're coming down fine. So what I like so much about DJI, in addition to all the other things I talk about, is the fact that they're absolutely considering the consumer when they build these products. Because to put a controller together for this, I know a lot of people thought, well, why is there a new N3? And that's probably because they've changed the way the connection topology works between some of the smaller drones and the controllers. I can't confirm yet if we're using, let me land that. I can't confirm yet whether it's using OcuSync, or I think it's a modified version of Wi-Fi, probably a souped up version of Wi-Fi, and that's why the N3 is important. But again, back to my point, DJI is a company that thinks about the ecosystem they're building of technology and pretty much do everything they can to make products work together. So if you've got the RC2, you can essentially pick up the Neo at a really good price and add that to into your fleet. You've got a new pocket-sized drone that you can fly with the same controller. You're flying the Mini 4 and you're flying the Air 3. And I think that's just amazing because other companies wouldn't have done that. They would have released a new controller. You had to get the whole kit, and then you've got extra gear you got to carry around. For me, I can carry this and pretty much fly the 3 drones that I'm flying a lot with a single controller. So it works great. Now stay tuned and I'll give you a couple of final thoughts.
So you can see that it works really well, and for me, that's a game changer, because the RC2 is the controller that I use most days when I'm flying my drones. And there are 3 drones I'm out in the field with an awful lot. The Mini 4 Pro, the Air 3, and now the DJI Neo. So having a single controller that I can fly all 3 of those drones at any given time is a really big deal. And I have to say this again, other companies would have released the brand new drone with a brand new controller that only work with that drone. DJI is a different type of company. They really care about their consumers. They're listening to the feedback. And when people started asking about the RCN2, what can you do to make that compatible with the Neo? DJI responded, because both of these controllers have what are called software-defined radios inside, which means the frequency, the transmission topology, the type of connection, the way the broadcast is sent, is all controlled by software. Both of these have the radios for both Wi-Fi and OcuSync. So what DJI did, their brilliant engineering team, they went back to the drawing board and said, you know what? We can put together some software that modifies the radios in these controllers to be compatible with the Neo. And that's what they did. So I really like a company that allows you to purchase a product years ago. This has been out for a couple of years, and then they're willing to modify it to work with their new products. And that's exactly what they did. So right now, the Neo can be flown with the N3, the N2, and the RC2. Now, I'm still watching that N1 because a lot of us have that N1 controller, and I don't know why they couldn't modify that to work with the Neo as well. So we'll keep an eye on the firmware updates. They just released a new firmware update for the N1, but unfortunately it didn't include the Neo. But I don't know, fingers crossed that they're going to include that soon, because I know a lot of people are still flying drones that use that original RC N1. So if I hear anything, I'll test it and I'll put a clip together. But that's pretty much it for today. So hopefully you found this helpful. Thanks a lot for watching, and until next time, as always, happy flying.